what is beyond the early careers, and how do we build our careers to be in that position where we are actually having a badge to display next to our name to show the work that we have put in.
Infection stops where information starts. Welcome to the Transmission Control Podcast, where knowledge is your strongest defense. Broadcasting from the front lines of healthcare, we dive into the strategies, science, and stories shaping infection prevention today. Each episode, we connect you with experts on real-world insights to help you stop the spread of healthcare-associated infections, protect patients, and strengthen your practices as an infection prevention and public health expert. When the right information reaches the right people, lives are saved.
Hello and welcome to a special episode of the Transmission Control Podcast. Today is a powerhouse episode about the Advanced Leadership Certification in Infection Prevention from CBIC. This is a phenomenal opportunity to move your infection prevention career to the next level. And today we're joined by phenomenal guests who will share their insights getting the AL-CIP and getting your portfolio ready for presentation. We'll be back after a brief word from our sponsors.
Brought to you from the studios of Healthcare HQ, let's get into it. This is Transmission Control.
Hello and welcome to a very special episode of the Transmission Control Podcast. My name is Garrett Hollenbeek, Editor-in-Chief of Transmission Control, and I'm joined today with our host, Jill Holdsworth. How are you, Jill?
Hey, Garrett. Nice to see you.
And today we have a complete powerhouse episode. We wanted to do kind of a special episode on CBIC's new Advanced Leadership Certification in Infection Prevention. And today we're going to be joined by Jessica Dangles, Executive Director of CBIC, Gail Fraine, President-elect of CBIC, Erin Wilder, Director of Infection Prevention at Kootenai Health, Lisa Hanna, Infection Prevention Team Supervisor at Washington State Department of Health, and Kornelija Delibasic, Infection Prevention Control Practitioner out there in Whitby, Ontario. Thank you all for joining us.
This is such a huge group of amazing IPs. This is going to be such a great show. Thank you all so much for being here.
Absolutely. And so, Gail, to get us started off, can you give us a snapshot of what the AL-CIP is and who it's designed for?
Sure. The Advanced Leadership Certification in Infection Prevention and Control is a portfolio assessment of knowledge, skills, and abilities expected of those individuals who demonstrate professional expertise, leadership, and measurable impact in the field of infection prevention and control. So this is specifically directed at those persons who are working in infection prevention and control. You have to have your certification in infection control or certification in long-term care, CIP, to qualify for this certification.
That's excellent. I love that there's an additional step built in for people who have had their CIC for a while or their certification in long-term care. And this really represents a huge jump in kind of that next career step for infection prevention. So what prompted CBIC to create this certification? What prompted that?
A lot of discussions began at our strategic planning session several years ago. There have been a lot of discussions on what's next after earning your CIC. So the CIC celebrated its 40th anniversary a few years ago, and We've had a lot of feedback in terms of, we want a more advanced credential, but not something that's going to be another computer-based exam, something that really demonstrates leadership and shows measurable impact. And so the board of directors decided a portfolio-based approach was really the best way to, show off the great work that IPs are doing.
I love that. And can you shed a little bit more light on that measurable impact piece?
Yes. So the assessment is portfolio-based, and within the framework, there is a professionalism and a leadership component. And from there, the applicant will submit pieces of evidence and write a written rationale. And we don't want to just see that, you've sat on a quality improvement committee or you were part of your chapter. We want to see what measurable impact you as an individual had as part of your evidence, as part of your rationale. And ultimately, we encourage everyone to kind of toot your own horn a little bit. So I think sometimes that's outside of the comfort zone of our applicants. But I think this is really a wonderful time to showcase the great work you've been doing. And I think that's best measured through a portfolio versus another computer-based multiple choice assessment.
Yeah, that's great. And I think that this is such a great way for people who have been in IP for a long time. And like we said earlier, like what's next? Are you really at the top of your career? Like, are you done, or is there more to achieve? And I think that this really gives IPs something else to kind of guide them in their professional journey. And if you're not meeting everything yet, then you have some goals that you can set for yourself. And as we're talking about who should apply, like who does this apply to? Erin, do you want to answer who you feel like this really speaks to as far as who is this designed for, or who does this apply to now?
Yes, thank you so much. I was really excited for the opportunity to take this, and I think that it applies to individuals like myself who have been working in infection prevention for several years, who have had their certification in infection control and renewed that multiple times. I was looking for, an additional step or something that I could do to challenge myself. So it would be for us, those seasoned IPs.
That's great. How did you feel when you got the news that you passed all the elements and you're advanced leadership certified now?
Yes, I was very excited. It was validating. I will say that the process was a little vulnerable. I'm used to the question-based tests, which I can do pretty well at, but putting together your work and putting it in front of a team to evaluate it was, again, it was a vulnerable step, but very validating when I achieved the results.
That's excellent. And congratulations on achieving that certification. It's a huge accomplishment. Now, looking at that process of review, and I like how you use the word vulnerable. I feel like that's come up in almost every episode, Jill, that we've recorded. Is IP is a vulnerable field, and we're always kind of stretching and challenging ourselves to get to that next kind of rung of accomplishment. So, Jessica, let's talk about the submission process. How does somebody who wants to get their AL-CIP begin that process?
So we have 2 application cycles each year. So the first is actually wrapping up on February 28th. We will have a second application cycle from July 10th to August 15th. And we will have 2 application cycles each year. And what's great is candidates can work on their applications at any time. So that application period is really when you pay your application fees, submit your documents, write those rationales, and actually submit them. But we would encourage everyone to start working on their portfolios now. So you can start compiling your evidence. You can start choosing the sub-competencies that you want to address and start writing those rationales just in a Word document. But once you actually submit your portfolio, after the deadline, we go through a very strict conflict of interest protocol with our portfolio reviewers. These are trained reviewers that have been trained specifically on how to judge portfolios of this type. So we make sure there is no conflict of interest, and then we actually assign 3 judges to each portfolio. So there is a very strict process with how the judging takes place. Everyone that's judging the portfolios are CBIC certified. I think the average number of years exceeds 20 years in terms of who our portfolio reviewers are. It's not something that's done by staff. It's not a board project. It is done totally separate from that. And we actually use a psychometric consulting group that ensures things like inter-rater reliability. We want to make sure we don't have any judges that are, known for failing everyone or known for, being the easy judges. So we're very strict, and we want to make sure that our judges are being consistent with how they're judging. So that's why we don't have immediate scoring. So it takes about 60 days or so for the judges to get through all of the portfolios. And as you can imagine, having 3 judges for each portfolio takes a lot of volunteer hours. But we have a very rigorous process in place, and we went through a formal practice analysis to really make sure that we're asking on the portfolio what IPs are actually doing. So we've actually had those conversations of what does leadership look like in infection prevention and control. It wasn't one person that came up with that definition. It was a really cohesive group of seasoned IPs.
And Jessica, just to clarify, in case anybody is wondering, what happens to your current CIC if you get the AL-CIP?
That's a great question. So it will be automatically extended. So you have to have your CIC or your LTC CIP to be eligible for the AL-CIP. But for example, anyone that passes the AL-CIP this year will get a new 5-year certification, and your CIC and or LTC CIP will be automatically extended. So you don't have to pay fees for both. You don't have to go through a separate process to maintain both. So I think that's a great incentive to, maintain all of your credentials.
That process is really interesting, and I think it lends a huge amount of credibility to the process, that it's not just one person looking at your portfolio and saying, yep, this is what I did as an IP leader, I'm going to sign off on them too, but it's really a really well-qualified panel of people who are looking at this. Now, Kornelija, for you, and you just received your AL-CIP, you were part of this kind of pilot process, right?
Yes. Hi, everyone. Thank you for having me. Yes, I was a part of a pilot process. It was a very interesting, actually, experience for me. The way it started, it was offered to us as members of the CBIC committee, the question committee, the task writing committee, right? So initially, I wasn't sure what I'm getting myself into. And then as I started working more through it, I was having my doubts for sure, because as you hear, it is a humbling experience for sure, looking into your own work, looking retrospectively to what you have done, and then compiling all of that work to offer to someone to scrutinize that work and eventually, hopefully, receive that certification. So yeah, that was kind of my experience with that. As Jessica said, it is 60 days, but it's very long 60 days.
I bet that feels like a long 60 days waiting for those results to come in.
For sure.
Now, I like the portfolio piece of it because, as Jessica mentioned, IPs are not great about kind of strutting their stuff, and we do a lot and we work very hard, but then putting that all on paper can be a real challenge. Kornelija, was that a challenge for you as you kind of put together all of your contributions?
Yes. Again, I think it's in our nature to, as ICPs, to work integrated with our teams and elevate other people's work. And I think for me in particular, was a bit of a challenge to separate myself and see how much energy and how much work I have invested into that work to elevate others, be successful, bring the knowledge to the frontliners. So my experience with building that portfolio was looking into history of my work and look at what have I done. And truly, I think the biggest issue was separating yourself and looking at, let's say, in a selfish way, I would say, because we like to give and we are giving bunch. And again, looking at our own work, separating to what have I done to contribute to this product, to this tool that we all are now utilizing, and building that building that into portfolio definitely was something that took time and conscious decisions to, again, separate your own work and how the idea generated in your own head. Where did you identify gaps from just being a part of a team and observing your colleagues, how they're performing, and where you saw the opportunity to, again, support them in their work, and then bringing that into focus in your own portfolio, right? So I think there's a lot of work that we as practitioners do. So it's just putting a bow on that work to present to others for review.
Sometimes I think we forget all of the work that we do too. And when you're going through this process and you start looking at all of these sub-competencies and you think, gosh, I don't have anything that goes with that. And you really have to think, because we do so much as IPs, and sometimes we just forget because we're doing so many things. We forget all of the things that we've done that are impactful. And I think that's why this can be like an emotional roller coaster almost, doing this portfolio, because you're remembering all of the things that you've done. And it kind of, that whole vulnerable piece Erin mentioned, it's kind of like, wow, I did this and I've done so much. And because you go through this like feeling of, oh, I don't meet any of this. There's no way I can apply. And it's like an emotional journey. And then you get to the point where you're like, no, I meet all of this stuff. And now I just need to write it. So you start to feel good about yourself after you think about it for a minute. Lisa, question for you. What motivated you to do this? Like, what do you feel like will motivate other IPs to say, yeah, I want to go for this AL-CIP?
Well, I was excited. I've been in infection prevention for a long time. And when I saw this opportunity, I thought it would be great to see how the process was, because I really hadn't done anything like this before. I take tests, I have different certifications, but this was a way to really showcase my understanding of different competencies and to kind of validate also some of the work that I've been doing. I work in public health. I have a team of great infection preventionists. We elevate them a lot and encourage their work. But it was nice to kind of sit back and reflect on some of the work that we've done over the years. And also, I've looked into applying for my APIC fellow designation. And there's one thing that stopped me from that, and that is having a master's degree. And so, I thought this is a good thing. I can try to get this certificate and show that I am a leader and still continue to work towards the other. Someday I'll go back to school.
No, that's great. Thanks for that. And I know there's, I mentioned some of the challenges that you can go through like as part of this journey. But Gail, what do you feel like were some of your own personal challenges and successes as you went through this process?
Well, like Kornelija referred to, I did an assessment of my work compared to the competencies and sub-competencies, and what have I done to fit where? And some were like what you just said. Yes, I've got these things, and I had to stretch a little bit. And it's like, oh, yes, I've done this work. So really to assess where you are with that. And I think that made it easier once I defined those competencies and sub-competencies that I was going to write my rationale and, submit my evidence for that. And that was helpful.
Now, Gail, can you flesh out a little bit what the competencies and the sub-competencies consist of?
So within the framework are two domains. First, leadership, and second is professionalism. And under the leadership domains, it includes the competencies of practice and innovation, change management and quality improvement, and advocacy. For professionalism, the competencies include accountability and inclusivity, as well as professional development.
That model of competencies and sub-competencies, why is that built into this process?
When we began the work in developing the AL-CIP, we really scrutinized the process of where do we want to go with this as far as leadership and trying to define that specifically. So within that, we created those 2 domains, with each of those having those subcompetencies within those. And what are the elements and work that the infection preventionist does on a regular basis, and how do we bring out that work, whether it's professional development, engagement, quality improvement. There's various ones. And so we define that then with those competencies, define the sub-competencies really as examples for that. But it was a good method of helping to drive your work to define that as well.
I think that's a really excellent model, because not every IP leader is coming in with the exact same experience and not the exact same contributions. So that model really lets people highlight what they're excelling in. Now, Erin, for you, what was your trigger point to say, I feel like I'm ready to kind of go on this journey to get this advanced certification?
Well, similar to Kornelija, it was through invitation as a member of the CBIC test writing committee. And so I actually saw the invitation. It sounded exciting. I probably accepted before I gave it much thought. And so it was just an exciting opportunity to me. I got very excited about that. For me, I'm also looking for ways to contribute to my profession. And I thought that this would be very, supportive of the profession and helping drive this process forward. So with that, I did go through a couple of different emotions as I was preparing my portfolio. And probably about a week before submission deadline, I thought, oh no, I don't have what it takes. But I kept up with it. I did seek feedback from peers, which was very helpful. I have a supportive team. They're able and willing to see things from a different perspective. They're younger IPs with only a few years experience. And so they gave me really a lot of very valuable feedback that says, they said, you don't recognize the type of experience that you have. You just have this breadth of experience that we don't. And so that helped me really finish my portfolio and submit it. So that was my process and experience.
Those are really powerful things to include. And those are things that take time to develop. Those are not kind of the hard skills and the technical skills that we learn as newer IPs. Those are things that take time and experience in the field.
And I think that matches perfectly with what this certification is all about. It's called the Advanced Leadership Certification. So it's not for the year one IP. So when you look at the requirements for this portfolio, you'll see that this is for an experienced IP who's done a lot of work. And when you're getting a certification called Advanced Leadership, that's exactly what you would expect. And this isn't an easy portfolio to put together because you are showing a lot of work. So I would tell people to really look at what the requirements are and start working on them now. Even if you are going to put in for the cohort in the summer or maybe next year, again, it gives you that to-do list. Okay, I haven't done anything in this subcompetency yet, but maybe that'll be my goal for the rest of the year, is to work on that piece.
Yeah, I think that helps a lot with having a well-rounded portfolio. And on that point, Erin, I think that's a great tip for IPs pursuing this certification, is have your team look at it. Leaders are often we get nose blind to everything that we've learned and picked up over the years. And for newer IPs like myself to see, man, my IP manager, my IP director, they know so much that I want to learn. And so it really sets a great template for encouraging your staff to continue their career development.
Absolutely agree. My team of younger IPs, very invested, very engaged, and gave me a lot of really good feedback. Without them, I don't know if I would have really identified some of the rationales and the evidence that I had and was successful in my submission with. So they really helped make me successful.
Now, Lisa, going to the portfolio piece, what were some of the elements that you included in your portfolio?
journal articles and also presentations that I've done over the years in different training programs. I had to go back and really think, okay, what is going to be good evidence to meet this competency and subcompetency? And then really making sure that I was able to tie my rationale into it. And I'm not a great writer. And so I rewrote this multiple times for each one up until probably the final day I submitted. But again, it was just kind of taking a step back and looking at the work that's done and wishing that I would have started a portfolio years ago, because I realized there's a lot of work that I've done in different organizations. And, it doesn't necessarily go with you when you leave an organization. And so I've really tried to encourage my colleagues and team members to start thinking about this, even if they're not going to submit a portfolio now. But it's great to be able to show that work that you've done. And I also kind of like with Erin, how she said she asked her team, I had to go back and ask my team a couple times. Just, there was one piece that I really didn't know if I could show proof or evidence, and that was advocacy. There wasn't necessarily a certificate that says you've advocated for different things. So, but just having to take a step back and reevaluate and look at some of the projects that I've worked on over the years helped.
That's phenomenal. And it does speak to that piece that we do all this work. And then when we look back, it's like, how do I show in black and white that this was done, that it was successful? And so, Kornelija, can you speak to that evidence gathering piece?
Yes, to reflect to what Erin and Lisa mentioned here, I think it's tying back to your work and looking at what have we done over the period of time. It's not something that we've done in past month, right? To get to this level in our careers, it takes time, and it does take a moment to start kind of peeling back to how much work did you do, what did you get engaged over your career. So for me, was initially I actually have looked at few potential runner-up candidates for my own submissions. And as I started building and writing the rationale, I was looking into some other elements and some other projects that I felt were more fitting and actually were better demonstrating my engagement and how much of the work and thought and idea and energy went into the project from my end. So that's kind of how I looked into the building of the portfolio. So if you were to ask me how to start now, I would say look at the work that you're putting in day to day and what is, again, your own engagement to actually show to the assessors your work, your contribution to the field, to profession, because the actual title of it is advanced leadership. So how do we demonstrate that advanced leadership in IPAC? And Jill, you say it's not for the novice, right? But I will just say this, that the novice practitioners are reaching out after I have proudly displayed my badge, asking, how did you get there? What does it take? How do I become AL-CIP and where do I get to? How do I build my own career with that as an end goal? And it's been really a great conversation starter. I've been contacted by many of seasoned practitioners, but it's interesting to see that our novice practitioners are also interested in what is beyond the early careers and how do we build our careers to be in that position where we are actually having a badge to display next to our name to show the work that we have put in.
I think that's fantastic that people are asking well in advance. Like, how do I get that? Because I think that everybody likes to have a roadmap, almost like, like we are checklist minded type people. And you can make this kind of like your professional checklist. And so even if they are 4 years away from being able to apply, it's still great because they know exactly what they need to do to be able to apply for this. And it's not just applying, it's achieving all of those milestones in their profession to get there. And that is such a great piece of advice for anybody out there, no matter what stage of your career that you're in, is to just go through the application and just make yourself a to-do list, whether it's for the next year or the next 2-3 years. And that's the best way to start and kind of go with your career from here. Jessica, quick question for you. For those IPs that want to think about applying or they want to apply, what are the resources out there to help people learn more about this and help them understand how they can apply?
Sure. So the CBIC website is always your best bet for the most up-to-date information. We have a candidate handbook that really outlines what's required as part of your portfolio. I put a video together on how to apply for the AL-CIP. We have a pre-recorded webinar where we have 2 very seasoned IPs walking through the process, giving some examples on what might count for pieces of evidence or rationales in each of the sub-competencies. We have our FAQs. Gail and I will be presenting at the APIC conference in Phoenix later this summer. We will be hosting another webinar on the AL-CIP in July in advance of the next application cycle. And we always do info sessions. So we did, informal informational sessions during the application cycle. We actually did 7 of them. The last one was yesterday. And, all of these great IPs on this call helped lead those sessions. And it's just a really nice opportunity to get your questions answered, kind of run ideas by people. So these are really great resources to take advantage of. And, like we talked about earlier, start working on your portfolio now. Don't wait until the last minute to submit your portfolio, and get feedback as well. And, something I'm really excited to share is even after the beta test. So we have, I think, under 30 AL-CIPs as of today's date, but that spans 5 countries, which I'm really excited about. So we have the United States, Canada, Saudi Arabia, Pakistan, UAE. So, reaching out to some individuals that you may know that hold their AL-CIP, I think is great. So I'm sure there's some mentors on this call and some future AL-CIPs from our upcoming cohort that would really be open to speaking with you, maybe helping you kind of decide what to put in your portfolio. So, use this as an opportunity to even build your network a little bit as well.
Great advice. I want to go now and go around to all of you, starting with Lisa. And can you give us just a quick tip for future AL-CIP recipients? What would you tell them? What's a quick tip if you're looking to apply?
Start your portfolio now. Start gathering your work and just making sure that you have this information available and share that information. Our IPs are doing wonderful work, and I love to hear about new ideas and projects, but share your work and document it.
Great. Thank you. Gail, you've already shared a lot, but you have one more tidbit in there for us?
I agree with all that. Make certain that your rationale and evidence is aligned and that each one supports the other. So you have to have a strong rationale supported by your evidence. And you may have a great evidence, but if your rationale doesn't support it, that'll be a lower score. So just make sure those are aligning strongly and brag on yourself. Tell all of your great work. Showcase your abilities and your expertise and what you've done and share that, and don't be afraid. And one other thing is, we want to have good outcomes, but sometimes it's not a positive outcome. So share either way. If it's not, maybe say why, and then what did you learn from that? But it's important just to make sure you have both those strong evidence and rationale.
That's great advice. And if you don't understand what Gail's saying about rationale and evidence yet, you will once you go and access the resources and the handbook and you really look into what goes into this application. All of this is going to make a lot of sense. So maybe if you're listening now and you're just hearing about all this for the first time, go read the handbook, look at the resources, and come back and listen to this episode again. And it will make even more sense to you as you start to prepare. Erin, your turn.
So I think as a recommendation, if you're thinking of applying, I would say follow the handbook. The handbook was very helpful. I utilized that and really followed all the directions in there. But the other piece of advice I would give someone would be to make sure that when you're reading it before your final submission, I proofread all mine. And one question that I asked myself as I was reading all of my rationales is, do the people assessing and evaluating my rationales, are they having to guess at anything? So I made sure to make sure that my rationale was clear and that I clearly drew the conclusions and the evidence that I wanted seen through the rationale, so that there was no guesswork in there.
All right. And Kornelija.
Yeah, so I'm thinking about it and I'm kind of listening to what all of you are saying. And I'm one of the quick tips, I would say, take it as a challenge, see it as an opportunity to showcase your success, showcase who you are, but also an opportunity to identify that there are still opportunities for growth. And to invest in your own future by looking at next 5 years and how to build your portfolio, make it better, and by that elevate the profession again.
I love that because it is a huge investment of time and expertise and talent. Those are excellent tips for somebody who's kind of at the start of their journey achieving this certification. Now, to close out, because this is a big investment, I want to throw this to Jessica and Gail. Outside of being one of 30 or so people that has this certification, what are some of the chief benefits of taking this big step?
Well, hopefully there is potential for growth professionally and certainly personally as well. You know, we want to align with the C-suite. We work with all levels from, our support services all the way to the C-level suite. We are multi-talented, multi-skilled professionals with expertise in a variety of areas, which honestly, I think the C-suite doesn't recognize on a regular basis. But we are very talented individuals that can lead. We work with teams, we analyze, we investigate and research. And there's so much talent there to be tapped into that I really think our leaders could utilize our skills and talents.
I think part of CBIC's strategic plan has always been to promote the value of demonstrated infection prevention competence. And I think the AL-CIP does a great job with that. And ultimately, we want to elevate the profession. I think that's the goal of APIC, that's the goal of CBIC. And I think this portfolio is a really wonderful way to showcase the work that you're doing. And I think this is something that you can show your employer, you can show your colleagues. And I think it's just the start of showing off really the multidisciplinary work that IPs do. And I sound like a broken record, but the measurable impact of the work that you do as well. So I think it's going to be very exciting to see what kind of research can come out of this as well, in terms of, what kind of work are IPs doing that maybe we don't even know about yet. So I think this is just a really great opportunity for elevating yourself and elevating the profession.
Yeah, thank you for saying that. And thank you to CBIC for seeing the importance in IPs and wanting to help us elevate the profession. I think that's something that we all certainly want. And so the continued emphasis on that importance from CBIC is certainly appreciated by every IP out there. I'll go ahead and speak for everybody. That's an IP that we definitely appreciate that effort from CBIC.
Absolutely. And I know this is such a huge opportunity for IPs that want to advance their career and get to that next level of achievement. So We want to thank you all for your contributions to the field of infection prevention and for really breaking down what this AL-CIP can do for the industry as a whole. So thank you all very much for sharing and participating.
Thank you.
I don't know about you, Garrett, but I am really excited about this new certification, the AL-CIP. I have been doing this for almost 15 years now, and I've had my CIC for probably 13 or 14 years. And this is such a great opportunity for people who have been in the field for a longer time. I guess I'm dating myself a little bit, but this is such a cool thing to work towards. It doesn't matter if you just started or if you're seasoned. And like we talked about during the episode with all of these phenomenal IPs, this can give you like a checklist for your professional growth and journey. And so you have something to work towards each year, and maybe you'll be ready next year. Maybe you'll be ready in 5 years, but this is so exciting. And I love that CBIC is such a cheerleader for IPs and making sure that we are elevator, we are seen, we are heard. And that is just kind of the magic of CBIC. And I just love it. I love hearing Jessica talk about how much they appreciate the work that IPs do.
And the process is so robust. We got kind of an inside look at what that process looks like. And that was really neat because when you see a new certification come out like this, you may wonder, am I prepared? Do I have enough experience? And we got some great answers to those questions that IPs may have. The other thing that I really enjoyed hearing about was, and this has come up a few times on the podcast, just that process of calling out your work that you're doing as an IP. There are things that you're doing right now that will lead into a portfolio, but one of the key takeaways is start documenting and getting evidence and getting that portfolio built now. It's never too early to start. We are grateful to our guests for the podcast today. A lot of talent and expertise on the episode today. This was a special release between season 1 and season 2 of the Transmission Control podcast. So tune in, share, like, subscribe wherever you find podcasts, and keep an eye out for new episodes coming up in season 2. Remember, infection stops where information starts.
Thanks for tuning in to the Transmission Control Podcast, where infection stops because information starts. If you enjoyed this episode, let us know. Connect with us on LinkedIn, Facebook, or wherever you get your podcasts. Don't forget to leave a 5-star rating and share this episode with your team. Until next time, stay informed, stay vigilant, and keep transmission under control.